And welcome to Tash of X-Flex.
Good morning. Well, today we've got Stewart, and we're having a chat with Stewart, who used to be a bailiff. Or were you a debt collector?
I think the normal term is enforcement agent now. So yeah, whatever we want to call me. It's got so many different names, but it's not the same thing.
So an enforcement officer and a bailiff, same thing.
Basically, yeah.
Okay, so how did you get into that line of work?
It was back in 2015. I just finished a contract. I used to be a chef, but I was getting really sick and tired of the job, long hours and all that sort of stuff. And I just finished a contract up in the Shetlands. I was looking at just doing something different. I've been doing catering for the majority of my career, mainly in the military. I was in the Air Force for a long time as well, and I just wanted to do something different, something completely left field. Saw that the whole enforcement agent side of things was a self-employed basis, and I thought, oh, a little bit more independence, had a little bit more control of what I could do, and just kind of sort of fell into it, applied for the job and got it through there. Yeah, so started, I think it was November 2015, and then ended up finishing the job. I think it was August 2019 that I finished. Okay. Just short 4 years of doing it.
And what was the training like? Did you have to train for a long time?
The training was, let me think, I think about 3 to 4 weeks. First week was like sort of all office based, so you had to go through all the paperwork and like sort of the company rules and regulations and all that sort of stuff. And then I think it was like 2 to 3 weeks basically field training with another one of the agents, where you just shadow and basically pick up tips and hints of like sort of how they dealt with things. And then yeah, from there on, after that, I think it was just on the 4th week, basically on my own from there on, and then just working by myself. So yeah,
it's interesting that you're self-employed, because obviously then the more money that you can reclaim, the more money you earn individually.
Yep. Yeah, and it is very incentivized. Obviously, the more work that you complete, the more money you get. And enforcement agents are out like sort of all hours in the morning. Like I'd start work probably 3-4 o'clock in the morning most mornings, and wouldn't finish until, especially when I was working down in London, I wouldn't finish until like 9-10 o'clock at night. And that was like that was Monday to Friday, and yeah, it was long hours just to try and get the money, but it wasn't always guaranteed. So,
so
that was the thing on it.
What were the tricks then of, what were you encouraged to do to try and get this money back off people?
I think first and foremost, you're always encouraged to just try and get hold of the person that you're after, or try and get hold of the customer that because you're always given a big list of like sort of jobs that you got to go through, and you got to try and get through them as quickly as possible. So you're always encouraged to drop off letters if you can't get hold of somebody, phone them, try and speak to them first and foremost to try and get a payment as such. Where I was involved in like sort of vehicle repossessions, because it was always car finance involved, it was always more involved about getting the payments than anything else. Getting the vehicles was like sort of a last resort as such. I can't really think of a better term to put it in. But if the vehicle need to go, then that's what we were encouraged to do. Now, when it came to the tactics of actually getting the vehicle, obviously in my works van, you'd have things like wheel clamps and things like that. So if the vehicle was there, to give yourself a bit of leverage, you'd have to clamp the car, so the car wasn't going anywhere. And then that would kind of put the customer on the back foot of, okay, I've either got to make a payment or I'm going to lose my vehicle, sort of thing. Let's say the majority of the time, companies I wouldn't say didn't want to take the vehicles, because all vehicles go to an auction house. They don't go back to finance company. They will go to an auction house and get sold off for minimal value. cheap value, then whatever that's sold for, that would get taken off the customer's account, and the customer will still be left with a debt 9 times out of 10, because you'd never ever make that money back at an auction house.
No.
So not only are you losing your vehicle and you think you're going to clear your debt, but you don't. You're still left with something that you've got to pay. I never dealt with anything after that because there's no vehicle to chase. That's what my sole job was. It was to chase down the vehicles more than anything else. Yeah.
Are you in your training, Stuart? Were you ever taught anything about law?
Oh no. It's the only things we were taught about was data protection, which, to be fair, from the other companies that I know of, the company that I worked for was actually pretty hot on data protection. It was always making sure that you were speaking to the right person, so you'd always have to make sure that you got their name, you'd done the security questions with them, so their date of birth, their address, any special passwords or anything that were on the account and stuff like that. You'd always have to make sure, because you get in a lot of trouble if you were dishing out too much information about that customer's account to the wrong person. And there's always one thing that I was really, really careful on, because I didn't want to get in trouble, because at the end of the day, it cost me my job. So I need to make sure that I'll spin. And that was the main focus, was making sure we got that GDPR, like sort of Data Protection Act, or everything that was encompassing that, made sure that we followed that to the letter, or as close as we possibly could do. When it comes down to actual finance law and things like that, no, don't really get taught anything about that. It's basically, there's the jobs, go and get them.
Wow.
Sort of thing.
So what about, because obviously you turn up with paperwork, don't you? You have to have something to say you're the enforcement officer and why you're there. And we understand that it needs to be a warrant. But a lot of the people that are pushing back against this, we know that the paperwork that's shown doesn't have court seals on it, doesn't have a signature on it. So these are just, they're not worth anything, are they? As a warrant, they're not enforceable warrants, are they?
They're basically about as good as toilet paper, from what I know now.
Yeah.
So yeah, they ain't saying the paper they're written on.
But it's interesting you say from what you know now. So at the time, as an enforcement officer in the job, you were told that that was the correct paperwork and it was lawful.
Yeah.
Right. Okay.
Yeah. Well, not told anything different at all. I'll say it's only been over the last, I'd say, probably year, 2 years, especially since the whole everything that's going on in the world. I'll try not to say too much, because I don't want to get things hit on the video as such. But ever since everything started back in 2020, and I've had a lot of time to look at various aspects of life, including this, learning all the stuff about warrants, finance, contract law, data protection, all that sort of stuff. Taught nothing about that. Absolutely nothing. It's ridiculous. It really is.
So when you
I do.
Sorry, there is a bit of a delay, isn't there? When you clamp a car and you leave that car clamped and you put like a sticker on it to say that it's clamped, and you then move away from that car, is it true that it's classed as abandoned levy at that point, because you're no longer with the vehicle?
To be honest, I have never heard that term. I was never told about that term, being upon the levy. As far as I was concerned, and any other agents were concerned, if that car was clamped and we had to go away and come back, then it was advantage to us. It was basically our property.
Okay, even if you left it.
Yeah, even if I left it. Which, generally speaking, it would happen if, like, sort of, I went out on the job very early in the morning, 4 o'clock in the morning, 5 o'clock in the morning, and I went round and I clamped 3 cars, because I'd gone from dot to dot to dot. Those 3 cars, as far as I'm concerned, were in my control.
Right.
Then.
So what happens if somebody cuts that clamp off?
It's happened a couple of times.
Yeah. What powers did you believe you had then, if that was happening?
That came down to, if that happened, it was criminal damage, because even though I had the clamps, I was still in the company vehicle, and it was actually company property. It wasn't actually my property, because everything was basically on loan to me, for want of a better term. And yeah, it was basically company property, so it'd be classed as criminal damage. Well, that's what I was told.
Oh.
Anyway.
And what if they managed to get them off without cutting them? So you can obviously let the tyres down a bit, wiggle it out, put your spare on, and then you can just clamp the clamp, say like to a lamppost or something.
The clamps that I used were, I think it only ever happened once. I had two different types of clamps. So the clamps that you see, say, which the, what's it called? The road tax people, the tax guys go
The
around.
yellow ones.
The big yellow triangle ones with
Yeah.
the chains, they go around the whip. I only ever used those in the last 6 months of me doing the job, because I lost one of my previous ones that had been cut off. But the old ones that I used to use were a two-part one. It was like a scissor clamp.
Yeah.
When held the wheels together like that, or held the wheels together, and then you put like a shield over the top of it. Those things are near on impossible to get off. They are very, very difficult. So I very rarely had the issue of anything like that happen.
Right.
I did have one guy where that happened, and I mustn't have put it on tight enough, because he actually drove off with it still on.
Brilliant.
And it was just sparking down the road. And he had to abandon his car in a car park about half a mile down the road, something like that. And I still managed to get the clamp back. The clamp still stayed on.
Wow.
And he still managed to drive off. So that's how sturdy those things were. The triangle ones, really, really easy to get out of. As you say, let the air out your tires. It makes the chain a little bit looser, and then you could just wiggle it all off. Those triangle ones are useless.
They are pretty useless.
So they're dedicated.
So what would so you say if they were to be like chop sawed off or whatever, or it's not a chop saw, what is it you use? A grinder. If you were to like grind one off, and obviously you'd have to then report back to your company and say, criminal damage. Surely that's very hard to enforce, because you'd need proof of who actually took it off. Because if you did it in the middle of the night, or got someone to do it, or paid for someone to do it, it's that thing again, isn't it, of needing the evidence.
Well, unless you actually got sort of proper video evidence. And as I say, it didn't really happen to me. I think it happened once, maybe twice in my entire career. And once that's reported back to the office, it's kind of even taken out of my hands.
Yeah.
It's just left with the company to deal with. So I didn't really deal with that. And as I say, it only happened, I think, probably once or twice in my entire career that I actually had to do that. So yeah, it's one of those things. I just left it with the company. I said, right, you deal with it. I'll come back and get a new clamp, and I'll go back out and
do your job.
Yeah.
When you were doing your job, did you ever feel for the people that you were kind of like trying to get the money? I mean, did you have to kind of like get into a mindset of this is a job, and you had to have a slightly sort of bullyish attitude to do the job, or were you quite personable still?
Yeah. When I first started off, I was very eager. I just wanted to do well. And when I look back at it now, I look at sort of the way I was taught and the little things that I'd been told and I picked up off all the other people I'd learned from. It was a case of just get the job done. Get the job done. Don't think about what they're going through, or about the customers going through, or anything like that. So when it came down to things like vulnerability, mental health issues, physical issues, and stuff like that, I don't want to say they were put to the side at the start, but I kind of feel I let myself down a little bit because I didn't pick up on it. But the further I got on in the job, and the more years I accumulated in doing the work, the more I saw things especially like mental health vulnerabilities and physical vulnerabilities, and just general day-to-day life of just people struggling massively. And
is that why
that's what I started.
Is that why you don't do it anymore?
Yeah. I mean, the initial reason was that I ended up falling ill myself through mental health as well. But that was not just a job wise, it was also a physical thing because I was having a lot of back issues. I ended up having to have an operation on my spine, which I still have issues with now, but I can deal with it. It's not a problem. But I think it was just a whole cumulative thing that just ended up stacking up more and more over time. And I decided once I had my operation, I was like, I can't go back to it. I could see the way it was going, and the more interaction I was having with people, it just didn't sit well with me at all. And that's why I decided I couldn't go back. So I handed in my resignation about what I was due to go back to work. I think in November, like on my 4-year anniversary, and like it was a couple of weeks beforehand. I was like, no, I'm not coming back. I can't do it. So I decided. I think my conscience got the better of me in the end.
Yeah,
So
that makes sense. So is it true what they say that generally the enforcement people will try 3 times at an address, and if they're not successful, they hand it back to the creditor, wouldn't it?
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. But we would always be encouraged, like, sort of do multiple visits on the address. If you hit it first time and you find the customer and you find the vehicle first time, then that was always like sort of considered to be the A star of it. But there was a lot of times where I'd visit an address like at least a minimum once in the morning, once in the afternoon, once in the evening, at various different days, to try and catch somebody. But there'd be other jobs where I'll be like, I've visited one job, I think at least 8 or 9 times. I could never get hold of anybody. You'd leave letters. You get those little letters through the door, handwritten, like sort of please ring me. And knowing what I know now, I know why some people who are obviously a little bit more switched on than I was at the time, why they weren't ringing. I was okay, fair enough. I completely understand why they do it now. And yeah, so you'd have to visit the address at least 3 times, if not more, before our office sent that job back to the client who we were working for.
So it can be more than 3 visits to the house?
Yes, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
But eventually you give up?
Yeah. So ignoring
if you can't find it.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's no, you can't flog a dead horse. If you can't find it and you can't get hold of anybody, what's the point?
Yeah.
So, yeah.
That
was the difficult part.
Yeah, don't engage, don't open the letters, don't answer the door, and all those kind of things.
Exactly.
And is it also true that once somebody's invited you into the home, that you then are allowed to come back in with a locksmith, for instance?
No,
that's a rumour.
No, that's a rumour. That's kind of like inviting a vampire in.
Yeah,
I don't know where that story is coming from.
Yeah, yeah, it's almost like you've invited them in, and then that means that once you've invited them in once, because somebody was saying that once you've invited them in and you've done the, where you do the thingy to see what they've got.
Yeah.
That then once that's happened, that they were allowed to get into the house like through an open window, or they could just walk in through the door. Is that true that you can walk in through an open door as well?
I never did. I always waited till I was invited in.
Yeah.
But to me, that's just manners. At the end of the day, you don't walk into somebody else's property without being invited in. So, I mean, I don't know whether other agents have just done that and they've just walked in, but I wouldn't.
No.
At the end of the day, it's still their personal property. It's still their personal space. You wouldn't do that.
No.
I wouldn't expect anybody to do that to me.
Yeah, no, it's awful, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, I'm still, even though I was in that position, I still tried to treat people as respectfully as I could.
Yeah.
And I'd expect to be treated the same way back. It didn't always get reciprocated or work, but I still tried. And that's what I think is missing from a lot of like sort of the videos I see from a lot of the agents turning up for like energy companies and things like that. They've got no manners, they've got no soul, no consideration, conscience or anything. It's like
no humanity.
Yeah. And I suppose ones that turn up with the energy companies, they're like revenue collection officers, aren't they? So I don't know if that's any different to an enforcement agent or whatever. I don't know if it's the same thing, but they seemed, well, they like to feel that they have much higher powers, it seems, these sort of revenue collection officers.
It's all bluster. It's all smoke and mirrors. They're just trying to bully and intimidate. Whereas I never use that tactic. I say if you treat people respectfully and you speak to them on a normal level and just converse with somebody, you could still get, like, sort of from my perspective when I was doing that job, you could still get decent results without pushing people into a corner. Just try and talk to them. So yeah, I don't agree with, like, sort of, especially from what I've seen over the last couple of years, I don't agree with what agents are acting. I think they've been absolutely disgraceful, to be
I mean,
honest.
do you wonder whether they are maybe a different type of agent? Some of these agents are trained up a bit differently.
Maybe,
Yeah.
maybe I don't know. It's a possibility. I know some companies have bad reputations, and I've seen it firsthand as well. So yeah, every company is different, and I'm presuming their training methods are different as
Yeah,
well.
there doesn't seem to be any sort of governing body,
No,
particularly, does there? It
no.
seems to be
There's no
a short training period.
and no guidelines for the industry.
Mm.
Yeah.
Not that I know of, not that I've seen. Anyway, I was never told of any, like, sort of industry guidelines or governing body that looked after every aspect of, like, sort of the enforcement agent side of things. I was never told about that. So whether there is or not, I don't know.
You don't know. And it also seems like the training was just done within the company that you work for, so they could tailor it however they wish in that respect, can't they? They can do that. So now, as you know, as things now, then what's your opinion on all the liability orders and these warrants of entry? I mean,
I think they're a load of bull.
Yeah.
Full stop. I think everything from financial contract agreements, whether it be loans, credit cards, car finance, anything like that, are all fraudulent. Everybody has been conned into this, and that people really need to start educating themselves. But first things first is you have to stand your ground. You have to drop that anxiety and fear.
Yeah.
Easier said than done. I completely understand that. It's kind of hardwired into our brains through just life and our education system. We're taught how to act in a certain way and how to obey a certain way right from the day that we're born. And all the way through our education system, all the way through whatever job you're employed in. You have to retrain your brain and just snap out of it and go, okay, I'm not going to be scared of this. I'm not going to let them win. Stand on your own 2 feet and just fight back a little bit. And 9 times out of 10, it will work. Unless you have royally screwed up somewhere, just stand your ground.
Unless it's criminal warrants and things like that, which is a bit different, isn't it, to this civil commercial stuff?
That's what a lot of people seem to forget, is that everything that involves this is all civil. None of it is criminal. It's all under civil law, not criminal law. So when the police turn up and say, oh, we're going to help these guys get in, no, it's the police that are breaking the law.
Yeah.
The police are there partiality and impartiality only, and to stop the peace, basically any else. And it is the people who are trying to enter the people's homes that are committing the acts of crime. Everybody has the right to protect their own property with reasonable force.
Yeah.
And if they do that, they are the complete right. If the police start pushing in and start helping the people, get photos, get their names, get their numbers, and put in complaints against them, because under the law they are not allowed to do that. They are aiding and abetting a crime, and everybody needs to understand that. And that once you do understand that, then you realise, hang on a second, what have I got to be afraid of here?
Yeah, and we've got to stop being afraid of pieces of paper as well. Because really, ultimately, that's what it is, isn't it? Like, we're frightened of a piece of paper, which is just insane, really, if you think about it. So, did you call the police when you used to do your job? Did you ever get the police in?
Yeah, quite a few times. More so when I was working down in London. London was a interesting stretch of 10 months of working down there. Yeah, came across a right load of good. Yeah, I mean, it was. I never called the police, like, sort of to assist me in just taking a vehicle away or whatever. It was always to assist in, like, sort of somebody was getting really, really angry and really irate. A couple of times I've had a hacksaw pulled on me. I've had a couple of knives pulled on me. So when that happens, it's just a case of, right, I'm stepping away. I am dealing with this. I'm going to call the police. The police, because that is a breach of the peace.
Absolutely.
They are not.
But basically, if you're polite and you're calm and you just talk to the bailiff,
Yep.
there would be no reason for the police to be called, would there?
Exactly.
It shouldn't be, but
Yeah.
they're using it. They're using
of
it, aren't
course,
they?
they're
Weaponising
bringing
it.
in the police to enforce what they're trying to do, which is
It's normally locksmiths, isn't it? It's to enforce the locksmiths to get in. It's almost that's what I seem to think it is.
I have noticed that tactic a lot recently, where especially the videos that I've watched of people have been putting up on Telegram and places like that, of these energy guys, especially more so the energy companies, turning up with the locksmiths, but they're also turning up with the police when they haven't even interacted with the person at the door or the window, and the police just come along as an escort. It's like, whoa, hang on a second. Well, that immediately sets people off thinking, well, hang on, why are the police here? What's going on? I've done nothing wrong. So why are the police here? So again, it's another tactic on their part to try and scare and intimidate you.
Intimidation.
Yeah. And the locksmiths can only get in through standard locks. So, for instance, I've got on my front door, I've got like electronic handle that you can only open with a fob. And then on the back door, I've got a big iron bolt, thing that goes through the wall and goes across the top of the handle, so that they try to come in through the back. So in theory, these people shouldn't be able to enter my house at all, because they're not allowed to break the walls down, are they? They're not allowed to rip windows out, and they're not allowed to. They can only drill a lock that they can replace like for like.
Yeah, basically a normal Yale lock or the old style keys.
The job one. Or the old lock one. So basically, the best thing for everyone to do is to invest a little bit of money in
good bolts,
and a good lock-in system, and actually they can knock and do all they like, and you can be inside your house and there's absolutely nothing they can do.
I'll just put loads of loud music on and have a dance.
I mean, what would you do now? What would you do now? So obviously you now know
both sides of it.
Both sides, so what would you do when a bailiff comes knocking at your door?
It's funny you should say that, because I am expecting something.
I'd like to know what you're going to do. I'd actually turn up at mine.
I am expecting something in the next few months, because I went down the extreme route of claiming a load of money back. And now apparently these companies, some companies aren't too happy with me now, and I've been getting harassed with and emails and all that sort of stuff. So I am expecting something at some point. But at the end of the day, all they can do is, well, we've got this. We want to claim goods in your house to the value of what you owe us, or get money off it. I'd be like, don't know who you're talking to. Bye-bye.
Yeah, so would you ignore the door? Or would you still engage?
Depends how cocky you're feeling, I think, more than anything else.
What are you doing?
Yeah, that's true though, isn't it?
Yeah, it depends how brave you're feeling. I think for me, I would engage, but it would be a case of how I would expect it to go is that person to introduce themselves, show me their ID, and then do the data protection questions. 9 times out of 10, on the videos that I've seen so far, they do not do that, and they are breaking the law. Straight off. We're not breaking the law, they're breaking the law. And you get their details, you take their company to the financial ombudsman, you can get them done. Flip it back around. If they don't follow those processes properly and they are breaking the law, you can get it all flipped back around and throw it right back at them. But even if they ask you your sort of data protection questions, so your name, your date of birth, and all that sort of stuff, just go, shrug your shoulders, don't know. And they can ask you again, you'd be like, don't know who you're talking to. And 9 times out of 10, they'll go, okay, here's a letter. Right, okay, straight in the bin, shut the door. Bye-bye. They can't do anything.
So they can't
force their way in.
They can only do something or engage with you if you consent to say who you are.
It's all about consent and confirmation. Consent and confirmation. If you give them that, then you start giving them a little bit of a leg up. You start giving them an advantage. the way I look at it is it's all one big chess game, and you have to move your pieces around tactically.
Mm.
So you have to play back and remove any advantage off the battlefield as such to make sure that they don't have any advantage at all. And the best way to do that is just not even confirm who you are. Because by law, they can't do anything without that confirmation. And that's as simple as that.
So it's really, really very, very simple.
I mean, you could answer the door and just say, "Oh no, this is an Airbnb."
Yes, I'm just staying
I'm here for a week on an Airbnb. You know, bye.
Yeah.
Oh,
I'll see you later.
One thing actually, I was going to ask. So, because obviously you did cars, so what do bailiffs do to find out the car? So, do they put a car registration in? So, say if it was for like a parking ticket or something or whatever, so they put the registration in, and then they know who it belongs to through the registered keeper document.
Yeah, what they'll do is there are various websites they'll have access to the DVLA website, so they could put in the registration, and that should bring up like sort of the registered address for the vehicle, unless it's a company vehicle and it'll be registered with the finance company. They will be the voters roll or the electoral roll. They'll try and check that as well. Also, they can check credit history as well, and things like that. So just to check like sort of your previous credit history and your various addresses that you've had and all those sort of things. So yeah, there are various ways that they'll try and find and confirm your address, but unless you verbally give that, they're still stumped.
So if, say, like Rebecca and I swapped cars, in essence, so basically I became the registered keeper of her car that she keeps outside her house and vice versa, would our cars in theory be safer if they were still parked in our street? Because if they went to the DVLA, the owner would come up as Rebecca, who lives sort of 30 miles away.
Yeah, I'd say so. In theory, that would work. It's probably not it's a bit of a risky one in my mind.
Why is it risky? Is that of interest?
Because at the end of like sort of, okay, they'll look at addresses, but they can also look at previous keep as well. So
we'd be the one before.
Yeah.
So they'll look and they could easily match that up, so they can see previous keepers as well as the current.
Okay, so are you better just to not have your car parked outside your house if you were worried about that?
Yeah, I mean, I know it's not easy, especially for people like sort of live in inner cities and really like sort of heavily built up areas. Parking is a premium. I understand everybody doesn't have a garage or doesn't have private parking spaces and things like that. If you do, you're well onto a winner as it is. Keep it in your garage or keep it on your private driveway, because no vehicles can be clamped.
On a private driveway, right?
Yeah. Outside my house, I got 2 private parking bays. They can look at my car all day long. They still can't touch it.
So they can only clamp it or touch it if it's parked on the road.
Public highway.
Public highway. That is it.
So could you do a letter? Instead of Rebecca and I changing the ownership, could I, in theory, write an invoice and sell my car to Rebecca, and could that be shown?
Yeah.
We'll do that then. I shall sell you my car and sell yours.
Okay. Yes. So in theory, we could show.
Just say that's not my car. Yeah, that's not my car. Yeah.
So we can do that. We can do some nice little invoices. Other thing that I've heard is if you've got a blue badge displayed in your car, they can't be clamped. Is that true?
That's a good question. And answering honestly, I never ever came across that.
Wow.
In the 4 years doing it, I never ever came across a
blue badge
disability blue badge car. And I'd say more or less, and I think I know the reason why, is because a lot of people who have the blue badges have disability cars.
Mobility scheme.
So, you can't through the mobility, can you?
No. Because that's basically under government finance. So you can't touch them. Private cars that have the blue badges in, I can honestly say I never ever came across it, so I wouldn't really know. But I would think the same rule applies.
Mm.
If it's a disability card, then you're denying that disabled person access to a vehicle wherever they
And
need.
services that they might need, so it might impact on their on their
Yeah.
sort of like their day-to-day living sort of thing.
It comes into that very grey area of vulnerability,
Yes.
and that is an incredibly grey area. Vulnerability is a minefield.
But the vulnerability, you're supposed to be able to sort of use that to help you to protect your vulnerable members of the family. But
Yep.
I've seen footage where it just doesn't seem to make any difference at all.
Unless it's visible.
Yeah.
You're in a wheelchair, or you've got a missing leg, or you've got an oxygen tank attached to you. I think people, if it's just not just mental health, but if it's something like that, there's no tangible evidence that there's something there, is there?
So do you think they just don't believe that if you say?
Yeah, I just think it's a hard one to prove, isn't it?
When it came to vulnerability, especially when it was more to do with, definitely more so the mental health side of things, because I was suffered from mental health for a very, very long time. I only just like sort of the last 4 or 5 months kicked completely my antidepressants for the first time in like 16 years of being on them, and I've kicked them like 4 or 5
times. So that's a major achievement.
For me, yeah, it was. It wasn't easy, but what I'd always ask, because I could sympathise with that side of things, I'd always ask for just that little bit of proof, whether it be a up-to-date prescription slip or even just a photograph of the medication box, something like that, and that would give them time. That would give them time to try and sort something out. And then you could go back to the finance company and go, look, this person is vulnerable. Here's the photographic proof. And then that account would be taken off us. And it'd be moved into their vulnerability department, and we would have nothing else to do with it.
There was separate. They were separate sort of department.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I've got a vulnerability notice on my door, because there's just a son with disabilities, as has Rebecca. So I've just put the notice on the door, which has just got all the acts and statutes bollocks, but playing them at their own game. So I mean, I don't know if it would help or not,
but it's worth having it up if you've got a vulnerable person in the house. But I don't think they take much notice.
No. Depending on what type of person you get, I suppose.
I mean, if you get somebody who's like sort of sympathetic and that will actually listen, which I know is few and far between. Well, from what I can see, is few and far between at the moment. It is just, don't be scared to show them that proof, because that will help you in the long run. Because if that finance company doesn't know anything about it, then they can't go on their rules and the government's rules on how to treat vulnerability. And that is a big thing. And it will give you a lot of breathing room. It will stop people coming to knock on the door. And it will stop a vehicle being taken away. So as long as you can prove that is it's almost like a blessing in disguise. Yeah, okay, you're suffering from vulnerability issues and mental health issues and stuff, and you're on this medication, and you've got these people chasing you. But if you could just help yourself a little bit and get these people off your back, proving that, you could be protected a little bit. So that's how I would treat it, and how I would advise anybody to go down like sort of that route if you're in that situation.
Yeah, so don't be intimidated. Stand your ground and show your proof, basically. Yeah,
that's the best way for it. As far as I'm concerned, that's how I treated the vast majority of my jobs. Don't get me wrong, there were a few people who I was really, really after because they were arseholes to me.
Yeah.
And there are people, obviously on the flip side of that, there are people out there as well that will try and take advantage of the system as well, and will try and take advantage of your like sort of kindness and things like that. So just be honest and upfront. Don't lie to them, don't sugarcoat it or anything like that. Just stand your ground, be firm, don't be scared of them, and just show your proof of what you got, and everything will be fine.
Yeah,
that's the best advice I can give.
And that makes it sense for mental health. It's fine for stronger people who don't mind people knocking, and you're confident in telling them to do one or
Yeah.
whatever, but actually if knocking on the door is causing great anxiety and real triggering your mental health, that's the best way to get it passed back to the original basically person, isn't it? That's the way to do it. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. That's the best advice I can give. Just be open and honest and take it from there. And fingers crossed, if somebody does come knocking at your door, you get somebody decent who will actually listen. Not like the majority of the people who I have seen.
And have you noticed
quite
these ones
clearly.
that come in with the energy companies? They're coming in with these so-called warrants for safety issues, yet they're trying to put in prepayment meters. So they're completely. I would be like, well, which one are you coming for? Are you coming for a debt, which is civil, or are you coming because you believe there's a danger to my supply? You can't come in with the warrant saying that to then do a completely different thing. I mean, that's just criminal in itself, isn't it? So they're so sneaky.
There's been a few of those recently.
Yes, someone we know, didn't they?
I had a very similar conversation with my energy company where a couple of months ago I cancelled my direct debit and said, look, I'll pay what I want to pay now because you guys are absolutely robbing us blind. And the person on the other phone was like, oh, we could end up fitting a prepayment meter. And I said, well, what good is that going to do you? I can't afford to pay the direct debit that you want me to pay. So if you're fitting a prepayment meter and you still want me to pay the normal prices that you want off the direct debit, then why do you want to fit a prepayment meter? Because I won't be able to afford that. So,
in fact, the prepayment meters are often a higher tariff.
Yeah, because you're paying back your debt. The first £15 or something you put on is your debt, isn't it? Yeah. So. And they can switch these on remotely, I believe. If you've got a smart meter in already, they can remotely switch it. And obviously lots of people are changing their meters to their own meters who have got these nasty smart meters as well.
Yeah.
And I don't think...
I'm trying to get rid of it.
Yeah. But I don't think it's advisable. I think where people are making the possible mistake there is that they're informing the energy companies that they've taken the meters out. But then, of course, you're just putting a big buzzer on your head, aren't you? What you do is keep the meter taken out so you can put it back in when you leave the property or you sell the property.
And don't say anything.
I think people are making themselves a beacon. Yeah. Because
I've just taken my meter out.
Yeah, I've just taken my meter out, by the way. Yeah, it's just like,
come and tell me all.
Yeah, I don't recommend doing that if you're going to take your own meters out. Tell them about it.
Yeah. Just do it.
It doesn't make any sense. You're just taking all advantage away.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. And also, I think if they were to eventually get into your house and let's say you had your own meters in and they put these smart prepaid ones in, you'd be like, that's my property. You leave my meters there. And then once they've gone, you just pay for an electrician just to put them back in again.
Back in again, yeah.
And it's for all intents and purposes. You've got the smart meters and you're not basic. They just think you're not paying.
You're not using it. Yeah. That's the one.
Yeah, that's what I would do. I wouldn't if they were in my house, I wouldn't kick up too much of a fuss if they got in. I'd almost be like, do it.
Go on then.
Have it on your record that I've got this smart meter in. Get out and then change them.
Change them back.
Change it all back again.
Yeah. Rather than if they get in, I'm not going to let them in my house. But if they did get in, I'm just saying, I think I would just be like, let's not have the hassle. Change them. Be nice as well. Don't be oppositional because then I think you flag up again.
Yeah.
If you sort of do it,
they just say, "Oh, she was compliant. We got them in. We got them in.
Job done.
Fine." Yeah, and then you're off the record. Yeah, I agree with you. Exactly. I think anyway, generally in life, with all of this, we have to be calm. We have to be respectful, and because we know the law and we know we have the information, being informed is really key.
Yes.
But there's no need to be abusive. There's no need we don't need to because we know we have the law on our side. And like, as you've said, to stand your ground, and don't be intimidated.
And don't consent.
And don't consent.
Don't give them your personal information. Never admit to being that person they're after.
Yeah, zip it.
Zip it. So I've got this baby seagull mask, and I really want to answer the door to the bailiffs in it and just go. Shut the door.
He'll say, yeah, this one's big like that.
Yeah, they'll come and take me away.
That's ace. I like that idea.
Yeah, I would just do something really silly. Like, just imagine if, I don't know, just something that they're not going to expect. They're all like outside your door, like trying to psych themselves up, and then they open the door and you've just got this weird scenario.
A seagull mask on or something. Yeah, I think that's the way forward. Just get a silly mask.
And then it just bluffers and they'd be like, oh.
It would intimidate them. Right, we're 45 minutes in, so we've done it. We usually kind of wind up around that point. But just wondered, is there anything else that you feel the general public should know? I know you've covered most of it or all of it, but is there anything else, just any little tips or hints that you just want to leave us with?
I'd say the only two things is, if you have a two-wheel vehicle, a motorbike, you're onto a winner, because you can hide that bugger anywhere that you want, in your house, in your shed, in your garage, anything like that.
That's true.
Agents ain't going to find that at all. Just keep it well hidden. If you do have a car on the public road and you know these people are after you, try and park it somewhere else, but obviously not too far away in the vicinity of where you live, but move it a few roads away, or onto your neighbour's driveway or something like that.
So if it's on someone else's private property, it's protected, is it?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Good.
All these little things, just like sort of try and find another hiding spot. I know it's an inconvenience, but what's more inconvenient? Somebody clamping your car when you have to take the kids to school, or
having a little walk.
Having to walk 5 minutes down the road to go and actually get your car, and it's not clamped. So they're probably the two biggest things, like, so when it comes to, like, sort of in the vehicle industry. I'd say.
Cool.
So.
Brilliant.
Well, thank you so much, Stuart, for talking to us today.
Very interesting.
Really interesting. And we know there's a lot of people getting visited at the moment. I mean, we're seeing things every week, numerous things every week, and also, you know, a lot of people really struggling to pay their energy bills. So if you can't pay, please just heat your home and know that you can deal with the enforcement agents.
Yeah.
The criminals.
Yeah. And thank you so much for coming on and talking to us, because it's actually really difficult to find someone that's worked on the other side that's willing to chat, you know. So thank you very much.
That's what I'm here for. No, not a problem at all. Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you.
Our pleasure, Stuart.
Bye.
Right.